What we are witnessing right now, we are living in it right now, sitting here on a Wednesday morning at 6:05. How comments from somebody can get totally misconstrued by the mob on social media and the media at large and lead you down the path to a conversation and a viewpoint that is in no way what was actually said by the person they're talking about. And that, of course, is in relation to Harrison Butker.
Yeah, I thought that was just me.
No, it's not just you.
Okay, you noticed that.
I noticed that. I noticed that on social media.
Wow.
Over the last 12 to 18 hours, I noticed it in news media. I noticed it on radio stations in this town. It was pathetic. And I predicted this yesterday on the show, did I not? I said, hey, Kansas City Star is going to write a piece about this. They're going to have an opinion piece on this in the Kansas City Star. And I thought it might take an extra day or two, but it didn't. I will get to that here in a second.
40-watt night light bulb went on the writer's head right when you said that yesterday, right?
That's true. They're always listening to the show anyway. They got to find their real news somewhere. You know, they can't find it in their own paper. They got to find it here on 95.7 FM KCMO. But yes, the Star did write this piece. Yvette Walker with an opinion piece. Chiefs Butker is welcome to his conservative beliefs, but he's wrong on women in the Bible. Leave that, set it aside for a second. All right, what I want to first address here is this notion that Harrison Butker told women to get back in the kitchen and have a bunch of babies. That's not what the Chiefs kicker did as he gave the commencement speech at Benedictine right here in Kansas. That is not what Harrison Butker said. There are those who are telling you and writing headlines suggesting that is what Harrison Butker said. I'm going to play for you what he said. And then, if you're a parent, you will easily be able to interpret this. If you are a mother, you will certainly, I believe, be able to interpret this. And if you are a father and you realize you are nothing without your wife, the mother of your children, you will also realize what's being said here by Harrison Butker this past weekend at Benedictine that has gone totally viral.
I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
That was Harrison Butker in a very controversial commencement speech at Benedictine over the weekend that we talked about yesterday as the video started to surface. But my goodness, the media reaction to that locally and nationally has gone off the rails. What I hear from Harrison Butker is a guy who said, yeah, God gave me some talents to kick football through the uprights, and that's great. But without those talents given to me by God, and without my wife, none of this is possible. He literally says, my success is possible because of my wife. He is giving his own wife the credit for the success that he has had on the football field, which includes back-to-back Super Bowl championships and being one of the best kickers in the NFL. He is giving her the credit. He's not saying, yeah, look at me, kick that football through, and my wife knows how to cook a damn good meal. Oh, man, yeah, she's raising the kids at home, and, oh, man, I'm Mr. Superstar football player. The guy's on the verge of tears. Listen to him. Not on the verge of tears. He's crying. He's tearing up. talking about this. He prefaced and began these comments by saying many of you, as he was addressing the women, will have very successful professional careers. But it's okay, and frankly, I think it's normal, to be most excited as a man or a woman for being a wife or a husband and a father or a mother before being a radio host, before being a producer, before being whatever job you're heading to right now at 6:10 in the morning. He happened to be addressing women in that case, but to me, that's across the spectrum. That's across the board. I'm more excited about being a husband and a father than I am doing this, and I love this. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. But I'm not more excited to do this than I am to be a husband and a father today. And then the last part. The last part of this, where he refers to his wife, and he says the most important title of all. And he calls her and says, homemaker. You know, I'm in the thick of it right now with a 5, a 3, and a newborn baby at home. And I'll tell you right now, what I do here every day is nothing compared to what my wife is dealing with and working on every day, and that is keeping these 3 kids in check. And God bless them. They're great kids. But trust me, it's a long day, and it's a very difficult job. And for those of you who have gone through it, who have been through it, who are going through it right now, you know that. And I say that as someone who, listen, you know, Kate and I met at Villanova. She had a very successful corporate career, Goldman Sachs and many other places that she has worked. She right now has taken a pause on that, but very much wants to get back into the space at some point when it's in the best interests of our family. And I understand that's not possible for everybody in every situation, but she'll be the first to tell you. And we talk about it all the time. What she does every day and what every mother or father, because I know there's a lot of stay-at-home dads too, what any stay-at-home parent does every day. If you're talking about multiple young children, it is more difficult in most cases than those of us who are going to some job, some job. Small business, big business, corporate America, not so corporate America, doesn't matter. That is when you talk about the day-to-day, the emotions, the running around, the keeping the kids in check, the running the household that consists of. That is as thankless and as delayed gratification of a job as you are ever going to do. And it's as difficult of a job as you are ever going to do. And the people who are most critical are those who just want to get in line because, well, it's the cool thing to do this week to knock Harrison Butker, or they're childless, single, soulless individuals who don't even understand what the job entails.
Oddly enough, the job of being a mother is like Clint Eastwood in Heartbreak Ridge movie where he's the gunnery sergeant. It is improvise, adapt, overcome.
And there's no blueprint.
No. It could change right now. You know, boom, right now.
I'm telling
Woody
you.
off the porch. Bam.
Exactly right.
Boom.
I mean, you know, and listen, with my schedule, I see more during the week than maybe, you know, most parents who might work a 9 to 5 do. I'm fortunate enough to get home middle of the afternoon. And trust me, like I'm here from 5 to, depending on the day, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If I get home at 3 to 7 feels like 4 days and 4 hours. That's what it feels like. Because there's just so much going on. It is as challenging and difficult and thankless a job as you're ever going to do, but it's also the most rewarding. The most difficult is also the most rewarding, and that's what Harrison Butker is getting at. The success of him personally, professionally, on the football field ties directly back to his wife, and he gives her the credit. He is honoring her. He is honoring women. And the way this whole thing has been misconstrued is so gross on so many levels. And the Kansas City Star, of course, jumped on it yesterday, which I predicted was going to happen. I'll tell you how they did it, and we'll get to you at 913-408-7957 at 6:15 on a Wednesday morning. We have the inflation report coming up next hour, so we'll get to that at 7:30. Busy morning ahead on KCMO 95.7. I didn't know how quickly it would happen, but obviously it didn't take much for the Kansas City Star to go after Harrison Butker after his commencement speech at Benedictine, which has gone viral. Not just locally, but I'm talking nationally and worldwide. I mean, it's unbelievable how this guy has now felt the wrath of the social media mob and the mainstream media mob. Just Google his name, and you will see story after story, and they're all negative, and they're all lies. This is from USA Today. Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker bashes Pride Month, tells women to stay in the kitchen. I mean, what? That's kind of crap that's getting written out there, John.
I saw one about rails against working women.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I didn't hear any railing.
I didn't hear it either.
No.
That's not what he said.
Ridiculous.
It's not what Harrison Butker at all was talking about in his commencement speech at Benedictine at all. We played the clip for you.
The headlines, Pete. I know something about it.
I know.
It seems like people read a sentence.
They read a sentence.
They didn't bother to listen.
They didn't listen. No. They don't want to listen. No. They want to fit the narrative. That's what they want to do. That's what they're interested in doing. So the Kansas City Star has this opinion piece up. Chiefs Butker is welcome to his conservative beliefs, but he's wrong on women and the Bible, writes Yvette Walker.
Well, it's mighty generous of them to grant him his opinion.
Yeah, wow. Gosh, Harrison Butker's allowed to have an opinion.
Talk about a bombshell.
Wow. Sheesh, that's so nice, isn't it, right? They have given him the ability and the right to have an opinion.
There's a certain colloquialism I would like to use, but I don't know if it would be received well.
Pat little Harrison on the head. You and your little cute conservative opinions.
Entitled.
Oh, okay. It is America, I suppose. He can say things, but now let's rake him over the coals. Harrison Butker's commencement address is under fire in social media. First off, reminder, social media ain't real life. Never has been, never will be. Okay? But they write it as if it must be true because obviously everything you read on social media is true. It's not overtly leaning leftward because that's what everything on social media is in broad part. But anyway, let's continue here just briefly. The Kansas City Chiefs place kicker is Catholic and delivered a very traditional and Orthodox commencement address at the private Catholic Liberal Arts College in Atchison, Kansas last weekend. Yvette Walker adds, raised Catholic and still a Christian believer, I was not surprised by anything Butker said, even though I had mixed feelings about some of it. Remember, Butker is both a conservative Catholic and a conservative in his political values. He values the Mass in Latin. Benedictine leaders knew exactly who they were getting. The audience cheered a few times during the speech, not surprising because it is a traditional Catholic college. Walker goes on the ad here. I have to address some of the issues here. His discussion on the role of gender and blind sheep-like following are worth exploring even more. Adding, motherhood and homemaking are incredibly important and rewarding and filled with hard work. So is choosing a full-time career. Many women do both. But here Butker suggested that staying home is more biblical than working outside the home. That's not what I heard. That is in no way what I heard from Harrison Butker. I mean, I played the clip multiple times, but when you look at what Harrison Butker said here, he continues to point to and note that his wife did choose to stay at home for their family, and he gives her credit for his success on the field due to the job that she is doing at home. And he goes on to note that it is the most difficult job that one can do, being a homemaker, handling the kids all day, every day. And trust me, how many of you are going to work this morning on a Wednesday? You've left either your wife or your husband, and, there's plenty of stay-at-home dads these days. One of my best friends happens to be or will be a stay-at-home dad at some point, and that's cool. But trust me, that's the harder job. I don't care how big of a schmuck your boss is that you're driving to this morning that you don't like. I don't care how many worthless, thankless, meaningless meetings you're going to sit in this morning and all you hear is the Peanuts teacher, want, 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 want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't pale in comparison to the job that the homemaker in the house is doing. And that's what Harrison Butker was getting at. And that's clearly what he said. And he also noted that, he was talking to women in this case, but he said they're most excited, not for their professional careers, but for their lives as wives and moms. And to me, that crosses both sexes. We should view this through the prism of being a wife, a mother, a husband, a father first, and then, yes, we are something else. Harrison Butker happens to be a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. But Yvette Walker, writing this piece, is also completely missing the point and is interpreting something that Harrison Butker did not say. She goes on to note that women leaders in the Bible didn't stay home and were part of the early Christian movement, and all that is true. But that's not what he was noting. That's not the point that Harrison Butker was making. And, the clip's up on social media. I'll share it again. I put up a tweet last night that went viral, by the way. I woke up this morning. I was like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. I said 99% of the media coverage. I wrote this on Twitter, and it's also on my X, and it's also on my Facebook page. 99% of media coverage around Harrison Butker has been negative, which tells you all you need to know about what he said. 1, the interpretation has been entirely corrupted, i.e. the Kansas City Star piece I just read. 2, it was braver than anything LeBron, Kaepernick, etc. have ever done. 3, shut up and dribble, ? The whole premise for those of us who want politics generally out of sports is taking it off the field. What any athlete does as a private citizen on their own time should always be acceptable, even if you disagree with their message. That's what Butker did. As a Catholic, he went to a Catholic college and delivered a speech to a Catholic audience. You don't have to, you can disagree with what he said, but at least disagree based on what he said. Don't disagree based on a headline and what you thought you heard him say.
Boy, did you hear the Pope at the Vatican the other day. Right.
So true.
Right.
So true. It's just ridiculous on so many levels. But it is something that, I'm going to keep talking about because the way I heard sports radio yesterday was like up in arms. Oh, what is Harrison doing? Hey, guys, stick to the X's and O's and leave the big boy conversations to the adults. All right? Unbelievable. Excellent point on the text line. Pete, sports media has attacked Harrison Butker for engaging graduates and reminding them of God's plan more than they did Rashee Rice, putting dozens in danger for stupid, selfish reasons. That is an excellent point. 1 hour away from getting the inflation numbers, and I'll tell you what Jerome Powell said yesterday, just in a couple of minutes here on KCMO Talk Radio. Hang tight for that. I know callers want to get in. Harrison Butker has gone viral, in case you missed it, the Chiefs kicker, for his commencement speech at Benedictine, where, he talked about being a Catholic, talked about his wife, her important role in their home, and somehow that got construed as being sexist and telling women to get back into the kitchen, even though that's in no way what Harrison Butker was alluding to. Jim's out east. First up, go ahead, Jim. You're on KCMO.
Pete, this is a bigger point than what everybody's trying to make this, because he attacked the liberals by saying the most diabolical things have happened to them, the lies.
Yeah.
And it was because a man could be a woman. But he also said in his speech, don't go for the falsehoods.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And that they attacked him now because he attacked them in a way they could never have done. And he just used the religion to the way he felt and the truth about man cannot be a woman. Only the woman could be that truly, and that's the most fulfilling part about it, because they're not faking it.
Yeah, that's an excellent point there, Jim. You're right. The mainstream media narrative does not want to come under attack from somebody in professional sports or in Hollywood. They've got all those folks lined up. I mean, they have that stuff lined up, and they know. And trust me, there are plenty of prominent people, not the majority, but there are plenty of prominent people in Hollywood, and even more so in the sports arena, who are believers and who are also conservative, politically speaking. They are scared to death to say anything. You know, there's a prominent Hollywood person who resides in Kansas City, and I'll just share this quickly with you. And they have this individual, I know for a fact, has land in the Kansas City area where they go hunting and where they bring other prominent Hollywood stars to go hunting. But they never talk about it because they would be shamed out of Hollywood if Hollywood knew they were hunters. There are plenty of examples like that in sports and in Hollywood, and you can't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. So Harrison Butker is now getting the treatment from the media of, you spoke up, you attacked us, we're going to crush you, we're going to destroy you, and more importantly, we're going to scare anybody who might think like you into keeping your mouth shut. Victor in Parkville, go ahead, Vic.
Good morning. You made so many great points. You know, it's the last
thank
caller.
You, Victor. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You know, and I couldn't give two shakes of a tail, rat's tail on what any, opinion piece on Pravda has to say. Red Star, KC Star, whatever you want to call it. It's bad enough that he gets attacked for being a devout Catholic. He puts a target on his back. But here he goes to a Catholic school, speaking to a dedicated audience, talks about how devout. I mean, what I hear in the piece that you share, when he tears up, he talks about his devotion to his wife, how important she is to not just him but his family, and that the woman in the home, as the mother, as the caregiver, is the bedrock of what American society is. I mean, she has been there. Actually, she is one of the key things that has made us a civilized culture in Western civilization. And, a lot of the friends, and I give so much credit to my present wife, who I met I got back together with in my 50s, and all my friends have seen a complete change in me. So I can personally attest to how important the right woman is in your life. And, I commend him for what he said, and I am totally on board with it. And I may not be a theologian, but I don't recall a whole lot in the Bible about women going to work as much as I do women actually being the homemakers and devoting themselves to their family and walking side by side with their husbands in their lives.
Victor, thank you very much. I mean, listen, it's a complicated world right now, right? There are plenty of women who are going to work because, gosh, I mean, inflation's up 20% the last 3-4 years. You got to feed the family. You got to do what's best by your family on that front. Like, it's not about judging that. It's not about being against that, right? It's not what Harrison Butker was saying. That wasn't his point. He wasn't saying women should work, get back in the kitchen. He just said the most important thing is being a wife and a mother. And I think you could make the same thing and say the same thing to men. The most important thing that you will be is a husband and a father. And then, yes, you will hopefully do well in whatever you choose to do professionally. But that is true across the board. And that's the broader point of what Harrison Butker was talking about there. And the way the media has misconstrued this thing is just truly unbelievable. Because their narrative was challenged. And it was challenged by somebody of prominence. And they don't like that one bit. And they're going to put an end to that before somebody else, even more prominent than Harrison Butker, thinks about doing it. And that's the broader point here. So we'll have the inflation numbers coming out in 48 minutes and 10 seconds. The inflation number will drop. Well, I don't think it's going to be good. Yesterday, Fed Chair Jerome Powell spoke about inflation, talked about it being sticky, and talked about fiscal policy at large needing to clean up in this country. First off, Jerome Powell alluded to the fact that if you thought interest rates were coming or interest rate cuts were coming this year, you're kidding yourself.
Question of restrictive policy, as I mentioned, our policy is the highest it's been in quite some time. The rate is, at 5.25% to 5.5% is high relative to recent history. So we think that it's probably a matter of just staying at that stance for longer, and that's how we're thinking about it.
staying at that stance for longer, meaning the current interest rate environment. Things are not coming down. Yesterday, you had the producer price index come in hotter than expected, going up, 3 straight months for the first time since 2022, excuse me. So that went up. But broadly speaking, Jerome Powell also talked about how when it comes to inflation, well, he needs to see more.
Is to believe at this time that policy is restrictive and that it looks like it will take longer for us to become confident that inflation is coming down to 2% over time.
They want to get to 2% inflation. They have not been close to it. Last couple of months have been 3.5% to 4%. That's great. It's down from 8 or 9% a couple of years back, but it's still nearly double where they want it to be. So Jerome Powell signaling there that it is going to take longer than we anticipated to get inflation back down to 2% is very telling. Because if you were thinking that rate cuts were coming this year and you ask Wall Street late last year, they all thought rate cuts were coming. They're not coming. They can't come unless the only way Jerome Powell will cut rates is if he wants to get Joe Biden reelected. Like that's the only justification. Now, he was appointed by Trump, so I'm not suggesting that he will do that. But there's no other rhyme or reason between now and, at the very least, November to cut interest rates. Maybe you do one late fourth quarter if things are going well after the election, whatever the outcome is. But I don't see how he could possibly cut them right now. It would be insanity based on what we're seeing from the inflation. Here we go. We got the numbers here. April CPI inflation rate is 3.4%. That nails the expectations. That is down a fraction from the month of March, which was 3.5%. Core CPI was 3.6%. That is right in line with the expectations of 3.6%. The core CPI does not include food and energy prices. So that number is 3.6, but the full number is 3.4. Now, what does this mean? This is 37 straight months with inflation over 3%. The Fed wants inflation to be at 2%. It is now over 3 years of inflation over 3%. And remember what this means, too. Inflation, to say inflation is down is like, okay, I mean, yeah, it's down from 9% 2 years ago, but inflation is not negative. Inflation being down doesn't mean prices are going back to where they are. It just means the cost of price increases have slowed down, but are still way above expectations, way above where the Fed wants it to be. And it means the Fed is not going to be cutting rates. Can the Fed really cut rates at 37 months in a row of inflation over 3% when their targets are at 2%? It's just not possible.
It's so simple. Inflation's just like your tires. You overfill your tire. Oh, whoops. You let a little air out. Okay, it's down. Your inflation's down, but you still are overfilled.
Yes, and that's what's happening here.
It's literally that way. It's not like, oh, it only went up 3%.
Yeah.
It went up 0.
It went up 3% on top of the 3% from last year, on top of the 9% from the year before.
Bam. Yeah.
It's compounding is what it's doing. It's compounding on top of compounding on top of compounding big numbers that we've seen for the better part of 3+ years now. To your point there, John, I mean, April of 22, inflation CPI was 8.3% year over year. Then April of last year, it was 4.9%. Now it's 3.4%, which is what the estimates were for. But you look at that number, 8 plus, add in another 5, tack on another 3. I mean, you stack that up, you compound that, you're pushing 20% over the last 2+ years of just cost of living. So saying inflation's coming down is meaningless when the cost prices and the increases in that are already baked into the cake, and that's what's gone on here. So, you can't have anybody from this administration jumping up and saying, oh, wow, we're down. Last year was 4.9. 2 years ago it was 8.3. Yeah, it's compounding. 8.3 on 4.9 on 3.4 is what you've done here. So, I mean, it's great it wasn't above expectations. It's great that the number came in at what the estimates were going to be. But with 37 consecutive months of inflation over 3%, how could the Fed possibly cut rates in this environment? It can't, unless it wants to get political. The only way that you could possibly, and it's an election year, and the person trying to get reelected, Joe Biden, would love the Fed to cut rates at some point this fall. And see, hey, we're turning the corner. Rates are coming down. Come on, buy your house, buy your car. Get that cheap money. Jerome Powell can't do it. And by the way, Jerome Powell, in a press conference yesterday, alluded to the fact that he can't do it.
Is to believe at this time that policy is restrictive and that it looks like it will take longer for us to become confident that inflation is coming down to 2% over time.
Yeah, that's a nice way of saying I ain't cutting rates. That's what it's going to take time for us to be more confident in the fact that inflation will come down to our target of 2%. That sound the alarms. What he's saying is there is no rate cut coming anytime soon, and there shouldn't be. And I hate that I have to say that. I don't want to say that. I want, people who are trying to get into the housing market, get into the housing market. I want people to be able to, because by the way, it's having a bad impact on the housing market. People can't afford the monthly mortgage rates that we're now looking at. And it also forces people who might move to stay in their home. They've got these golden handcuffs of a, high 2, low 3 mortgage. You're going to sell that home to upgrade and then have to get a new mortgage at 5, 6, 7%? That's insane. So even people who might consider moving, whether it's, getting a bigger home, downsizing, anything, unless they're selling and then buying in cash, which if you're a cash buyer, now's a great time for you. But not many people are like, yeah, I'm going to buy a home with cash in a climate where the average home price is now over $400,000. But it's great for the investor class, by the way. It's good for them. Once again, middle class getting screwed, investor class doing well. They're stacking up properties. They're living high on the hog. This is a great environment for them. For, regular middle class Americans, not so much. And then there's the bigger conversation here. And Jerome Powell kind of got to it yesterday. But once again, to me, he's being way too nice about this. All Jerome Powell can do is increase or decrease interest rates in response to Congress. That's all he can do, right? He's not a politician. He's not a policy guy. He's just like the Fed chair. Not just the Fed chair, but you know what I mean. He's not doing anything on the policy front. He's not asked to do anything on the policy front. But he finally started saying some of the things that he should have been saying a long time ago. And he should say it a little more forcefully than what he said yesterday when he alluded to the fiscal policy of this country being an utter mess. We are running multi-trillion-dollar deficits with full employment. Think about how dangerous that is.
I don't think it's not that it makes my life more difficult or the Fed's work more difficult, but I think it's utterly non-controversial to say that U.S. fiscal policy is on an unsustainable path. Not that our fiscal position itself is unsustainable, but the path is unsustainable, meaning that we have full employment and we're running big structural deficits, and it's we're going to have to deal with this sooner or later, and sooner is a lot more attractive than later. I do hear from elected people on both sides of Capitol Hill and in both political parties that they do understand this. Mm-hmm. And I think you mentioned the Congressional Budget Office. I think everyone should be reading the things that they're publishing about the U.S. budget deficit and the path, and should be very concerned that this is something that elected people need to get their arms around sooner rather than later.
Well said by Jerome Powell. Said it much nicer than I would have said it. The reality is we have a bunch of cowards and losers across both political parties who don't want to do anything about the debt. Republicans like to pretend they care about the debt when a Democrat's in the White House. Oh, my gosh, we got $35 trillion in debt. Yeah, and you guys ran out plenty of debt, too, during the Trump years. They don't care about the debt. And anytime you ask a Republican, okay, what are you going to do about the debt? And understanding that the bulk of the debt is driven by entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, they're like, well, we don't want to touch those. They're afraid of that third rail. they're scared to death of it. They don't want to do the adult things that need to be done. And then, of course, the Democratic side of the aisle just wants to spend and spend and spend and buy your votes. And if they had their way, you'd get some more stimmy checks this year to try to buy off your votes and bail out your student loan debt and bail out everything else under the sun. I mean, they haven't met a spending program they don't like. So both parties are very much to blame, and there are no adults because all they care about is getting themselves reelected. And in the meantime, Jerome Powell's right. We are heading off a fiscal cliff. We have full employment and are running a $1.7 trillion deficit. That was the deficit in 2023. We've got $35 trillion in debt. At some point, you got to start turning around that ship. And by the way, something that gets overlooked with these high interest rates, the debt payment on our own debt is skyrocketing. The fact that we've got to pay now higher interest rates on our own debt as a nation is problematic. So Jerome Powell is pointing out the obvious things that need to be said. I just wish he would do it with a little more force, a little more aggressiveness, and also just point out the obvious things that need to be said as well, and just call these people out. And you can do it across the political spectrum. It's really apolitical in many senses. 745, that inflation number coming in at the expectation of 3.4%, 37 straight months of inflation over 3%. The Fed target is 2%. The Merriam, Kansas City Council should be ashamed of itself. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should be embarrassed by a decision they made this week in a 6-2 vote to allow only American flags to fly at the city's Flags for Freedom event around the Independence holiday this year. So this vote came down on Monday night, and I just had it sent to me yesterday what happened here in Merriam. And it's amazing that somehow having the thin blue line flag is controversial. You know, the flag that honors fallen law enforcement, right? And here we are sitting here in National Police Week, and we find out that Merriam, Kansas, and its city council is such a pathetic bunch of cucks that they have acquiesced to the most radical, insane, unreasonable people in their community to vote against having the thin blue line flag displayed during their Flags for Freedom event. They are only going to allow the American flag. Well, at least they'll allow the American flag. Before you know it, they'll have the Palestine flag flying high there in Merriam with the way they're going. So what this is about is an event that was started back in 2006 in response to the September 11th attacks. And it was started by volunteers and was called Healing Fields. Well, now, because this event has become so big in Merriam and has become co-sponsored by the city of Merriam, there's a belief that having the thin blue line flags could trigger some people or could potentially imply something that they don't mean to imply. Here's how KCTV5 writes it. This decision comes with the thought that a city-sponsored event ought to be mindful of any ambiguous messaging, whether intentional or not. What is ambiguous messaging around the thin blue line flag? It's a sign and a show of support for law enforcement. That's all it is. If anyone is triggered by the thin blue line flag, that's on them. That's not on the city of Merriam, John, to try to protect somebody offended by a thin blue line flag.
I'm with you there. I've seen different flag causes, and they get co-opted real quick by the left, left, I will say, because they'll try to infer that it means that you're a racist or that you're some extreme position when you adopt a flag. So this thin blue line flag is getting its message co-opted and then rewritten to whatever the lefty wants to say it in first.
Well, that's what they do, right? They'll say the thin blue line flag, and that's what they're implying here. That's racist.
Brutality.
You're supporting police brutality. No, you're backing the blue. You're backing our law enforcement. And by the way, you're honoring those who have sacrificed it all on behalf of their communities. That's what this thin blue line flag in Merriam was intended to be about during this week. So I want to play some of what was reported here on Fox 4 on this story and continue with the conversation. Here we go.
8 fallen Wyandotte and Johnson County deputies and police officers since 2016. For the past 6 years, they've been honored at Miriam's 4th of July event, Flags for Freedom.
It has been 5 years, 333 days, and 3,110,400 minutes since my father's untimely murder.
Tonight, the Rohrer family and others speaking out against a plan to remove those thin blue line flags and only fly the 1,200 or so American flags that started the event back in 2006. This is the first year the event will be run by the city and not just volunteers.
So because the city's involved this year and not just volunteers, that's why the city of Merriam is voting to get rid of these thin blue line flags as part of this flag event. And that in and of itself is cowardly. So now the vote doesn't ban or eliminate thin blue line flags within the city. Just to be clear, that's not what this is about. However, this is still something that the city should be shameful of the decision that it ultimately made.
Well, I would say, yeah, I'm with you there. It should include all flags, I think, not just this one then. There better not be any Chiefs flag up there, right?
Yeah.
In that sense.
I mean, you know what are they going to do for Pride Month? I'm just curious.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You know? I don't know.
If they want to take that approach, then let's make that stick in 100%.
Yeah, I'd like to see how they handle some of the other things going on. But regardless of any of that, taking the thin blue line flag and implying something that it is not intended to be. If somebody is offended, if they think the thin blue line flag is racist, well, guess what? Tell them to grow up. That's what you do. You say these flags are here to honor the men and women in the area who have sacrificed it all on behalf of their communities. If you think it means something else, that's on you. We're telling you as a city, this is what this flag represents, as it has for many years in this event. You can think it means something else. You can want it to mean something else, but we are telling you as the city of Merriam, this is what this flag means and this is what this flag represents. They're not flying the freaking Confederate flag up at the event and saying, woo, yeah, Confederacy. I mean, like where there's some ambiguous interpretation of it. What this is really about is trying to turn the thin blue line flag into a modern-day Confederate flag, which is what people want to do. And it's simply because they don't like the police. And the fact that Merriam is, falling for this, my goodness, what an embarrassment. And this is why you got to care about who's on your city council. It wasn't even a close vote. It was 6-2.
This is what I would not do as the city administrator. I would not come to you and say, this should only be about police officers. I would not come to you and say this should only be about police officers in some sort of hazy, ill-defined geographic region.
After Councilman Jason Silvers questioned whether the flags were appropriate for a city-sponsored event, in a memo describing the issue tonight, Administrator Chris Engel said while the men and women paid the ultimate sacrifice, for others, those flags represent something less honorable.
And when I read the words, less than honorable, in the City of Merriam agenda, regarding the flags that fly for the officers who died protecting our cities, I was not only heartbroken, but I was disgusted.
Former Wyandotte County Sheriff Don Ash says he believes some incorrectly view the flag as racist.
Follow the truth and do the morally correct thing and keep this celebration that so many people have come to love and appreciate and participate in, keep it active here.
While the city administrator says it's just an administrative issue, for Emma Rohrer, it's personal.
Here's where I leave you with a simple question. Why should the flag, which is a small and simple gesture of the remembrance of my dead father, be taken away? Why should one of the only signs of what my father gave be taken away?
That is very well said. And, part of me wonders, too, if the city is this offended by the thin blue line flag, maybe they shouldn't be a part of the event. I don't know how this went from being all volunteer to involving the city. I don't know. I'll reach out to somebody in Merriam who maybe understands.
Curious about that.
How that happened. But broadly speaking, maybe the volunteers should just take it back.
Yeah.
Because the government screws everything up anyway.
Touche.
So get them out. Get them out. Do this event, make it volunteer-based, and that way the city of Merriam will not sit there and say, yeah, no thin blue line flags this year because somebody might think it's racist. And how about that decision coming down during National Police Week? What an absolute embarrassment. My gosh. 913-408-7957. Almost 20 years for this event, and now that it's city-led as of last year, yeah, we don't want to offend anybody with a thin blue line flag honoring the men and women who sacrificed it all on behalf of their communities. We'd hate to see that. I mean, what a slap in the face to law enforcement in that town. And by the way, the police chief in that town, he should be speaking up today if he's got any backbone, or she's got any backbone. I admit I don't know who it is, but got to stand up to your own city council. 913-408-7957. We'll get to Aaron Hedlund with the Show Me Institute, bottom of the hour, in terms of what the inflation report means for the economy at large. The attacks continue on Harrison Butker. It's all coming up on KCMO 95.7. A lot of you commenting on the text line, Merriam is a wannabe Prairie Village. I'm not going to speak to that. I don't know. I just know that the city council going along with this craziness on a 6-2 vote to not have the thin blue line flags out for their Flags for Freedom event this year because they're afraid the thin blue line flag might be triggering to some people is just so ridiculous on so many levels. 913-408-7957. Isaac is on KCMO. What's up, Isaac? Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. Hey, this whole flag issue we got going on here. Now, I understand what their point is, but by the same aspect, if you're going to eliminate the thin blue line, you have to eliminate the pride and any other flag. But what I don't think most people don't understand is the U.S. flag. That is the most important flag. And anybody that wants to fly whatever they want, that's protected by free speech. That is expression. And anybody that gets mad at people for disrespecting the flag, they must understand that when you disrespect the flag, that right to disrespect the flag is protected by the very thing that flag represents, which is free speech.
Yeah, no, so like you can burn you're right. You can burn the American flag. I mean, that's America. It's ironic that the flag represents your right to burn the flag, but that is correct.
Yes, right. So anytime you see somebody that wants to kneel for the flag, then I think the best thing to do is to walk up to that person and tell that person, I respect your right for free expression to kneel and disrespect that flag. But in doing so, you are actually saluting the flag in your own way by doing what that flag gives you the right to do. So when you do that, you're not disrespecting the flag, you're not respecting the people, you are disrespecting yourself for not understanding that.
Yeah, but you have every right to do it there, Isaac. You're right about that. Thank you, man.
That's my 2 cents.
You bet. Thanks, buddy. 913-408-7957. That is absolutely true. That's why, when you see protests, people burning the American flag, I mean, I think it's gross, but it's not illegal. You got a right to do it, and that is free speech. So you got to accept that. That's the beauty of what comes with the flag. All that is absolutely true. But in this case, in Merriam, what this is really about is about interspersing a thin blue line flag within American flags in honor of those who have sacrificed it all right here in, the Merriam area, the Kansas City area, who have sacrificed it all during this week. That's what it's intended to be about. It's not about triggering anybody. I mean, if we're going to create a world and an environment where nobody is triggered, where nobody is offended, despite the fact that now we live in a culture where it is in vogue to be offended, it is popular to classify yourself as a victim. That's what we've created. We've created a culture where if you can check off certain boxes that make you a victim, you're part of the in crowd. It used to be you wouldn't want to be a victim. Now it's like, no, what kind of victim status can you represent? So with that being part of the equation now, you're always going to find people who are perpetually offended because they want to be. Social media has exacerbated that, of course, but that's now the environment that we live in. So for a city council, for a committee in Merriam to say, well, we don't want to offend anybody. And here's how it always works. If you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. if you acquiesce a little bit, there's always something else. Like when it comes to cancel culture, it's the same thing. That's basically what this is, right? You cancel something, there's something else that needs to be canceled. Well, they got you in Merriam on the thin blue line flag. What's next? Cancel the event. The American flag upsets me. It represents, the white patriarchy, something like that.
I think the more direct thing, my approach is, I don't care what you're against. What are you for? I get tired of hearing people whine. I don't care what you're against. What is it that you're for? That shuts up half of them. Yeah. They don't know what they're for. They're just whining.
And the other half I don't want to hear from, That's kind of where I'm at.
Go ahead and own it,
Yeah.
So, I'm for the destruction of America. Okay. Well, now I know where you stand, right? Don't give me this, I'm offended.
Now we know what you are, at least.
Exactly.
To your point. So, yeah, that is very much true. So Merriam's making all kinds of mistakes, and I'm going to start doing some more digging on this today and see where exactly things are at, try to talk to some of the other people involved and figure out how we got where we did. 913-408-7957 is the text line here on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, what about public works employees that die on the job? How about a flag for them? Come on, wise guy. I mean, you can honor them in some way, but talking about, and I'm not downplaying any of this, but if a guy in the water department dies on the job, it's a little bit different from law enforcement who are under attack on a daily basis from the worst actors in our community and wake up every day knowing they can die on their job. That's different from the guy in the water department, having a fluke accident on the job. Just is. And I'm pretty sure that most people understand that. As we approach the bottom of the hour, we're going to get to Aaron Hedlund with the Show Me Institute in 10 minutes to react to the inflation numbers from last hour that came in at expectations, but still way too hot. But just some breaking news. Joe Biden has accepted 2 debates with Donald Trump. Let's go. Let's roll the tape.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays. Donald Trump.
Wait, what? I hope you're. I know you're free on. What is that?
Non-trial. You're free on Wednesdays.
What is that? A non-trial day or something? Is that a day the court's not in New York or something? Go ahead and make my day, pal. All right, Clint Eastwood. Okay.
I guess
Please.
They do have court off today.
Is that right? There's no court on Wednesdays? All right, whatever. I hope you. Yeah. So this guy who has his own political party attacking his political opponent is now mocking it.
14-second video, 7 jump cuts.
Yeah, 7 jump cuts in a 14-second video. Meaning, now what Mark is implying there with a jump cut, meaning they could not record that in one fell swoop. 14 seconds of Joe Biden challenging Donald Trump to a debate cannot be recorded in one 14-second clip. Because the guy literally is slurring his words or can't read the teleprompter or whatever. That is an utter embarrassment. So game on, man. And trust me, no one's going to confuse Clint Eastwood with Joe Biden. Outside of the fact that they're both really old right now. But I'll take Clint Eastwood 10 out of 10 times over Pops there. So he's proposed 2 debates. He's proposed one in June and one in September. That's next month,
apparently on a Wednesday.
Yeah, apparently on a Wednesday. Notice he doesn't want one in October. He does not want one too close to the election. Gets one in June, summertime, people are starting to take off. And then September, far enough away from the election where his media buddies will cover his rear end when he face plants. And, then he can look like he's ready for a debate and he's debating. Come on. Are you kidding me? And if he wants to mock somebody's schedule, please. I mean, the guy doesn't do anything all day. You really going to go down that road, Pops? You kidding me? Jeez.
Come on, man.
All right.